Andrew Renfroe, man. Thanks for joining me today, man. It's good to have you.
Of course.
Uh,
Thank you for having me.
but man, the first time I think I encountered you was a clip on Facebook. Um, and you guys were outside, maybe Times Square, I'm not sure, but you were throwing down on the Skip James song, the Killing Floor Blues. And I'm like, yo, that's a little different right there. I can hear, a little touch of Kurt Rosenwinkel, a little touch of Hendrix. I can hear Coltrane, but I can hear this commitment to the blues, somebody that appreciates and equally loves, Son House, and Albert Eiler and Sonny Rollins. Like that's kind of rare, man. And I just want to ask you just this big question and take it wherever you want to. How did you stumble on to your musical brew?
Uh, well, I mean, it wasn't all that calculated, I guess. I mean, I'm from Florida and,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, third generation Florida. So, some southern roots for sure. And going back in all my family. So my first love was Tom Petty. That was what was on in the house, and then from there I started playing guitar, and there was always a certain uh, rootsiness, country aesthetic that I would, resonated with me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I went to jazz school and fell in love with Coltrane. My high school band teacher gave me records by Coltrane and Lee Morgan and Wayne Shorter, and RH Factor, Roy Hargrove, like those were my first sort of entrances into the music. Um, but Coltrane in particular grabbed me really hard, and that was, I immediately, some of the jazz stuff is, it's foreign when you're young and you're trying to figure it out, but like Coltrane in particular just hit me right between the eyes, and sort of the earthiness, the groundedness, the sort of like gravity of how they played 8-bar phrases.
Okay.
There's a thing there that really hit me. Um, and then later, I think I started once I was in New York, I started really kind of being methodical about checking out Son House and Lightning Hopkins and Mississippi Fred McDowell and all these people, and trying to be kind of a musicologist in searching for the roots of some of these influences that run through me and run through the music. Um, Checking out field recordings from West Africa. I got really deep into that for a while, and I don't know. I'm interested in finding what is that first kernel of something before it all got watered down and everything is everything.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. And listening to the way you play, and also how you write. Um, this brand new record, Run in the Storm, when I was listening to it today, um, some of the things that grabbed me was um, not the knowledge of your harmony, but the instincts in your harmony. I'm from Tennessee. I just moved to New York in January 2020. So um, I definitely have a commitment to groove, to the things that I like and listen to. I like a lot of different things, but more so when I was listening today, it was like, okay, man, this is some really hip through composed stuff. But where he stops and loops for the solos is like the perfect, greasiest, awesomest place in the harmony of the song. And it's just like he knows where to lay on a groove and bring out the tune based on this really good get down section. And I wanted to know, is that something that you come up with first? Or as you're writing the tune, does something stick out to say, hey, man, maybe we need to sit in this part a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think it maybe depends on tune to tune.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I mean, in a way, the first thing I thought when you described that is probably borrowed time, and then the later on the album, it kind of, that same chord progression reappears as ghosts. And
Hmm.
that was something that I think at first it started first as the vamp, as just that groove section, and then the tune was built around it later. Um, so I'm not sure that I could say that's how it always goes, but in that case, yeah, I had a certain solo section in mind first.
Hmm. Hmm. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's really cool. You and I have a mutual friend in Curtis Noasad. I just saw him
Oh yeah, great guy.
2 days ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's my dude. And I really appreciate how he's blended the acoustic with the electric drums, and you've had acoustic and electric sounds. That's really cool. I thought about Hardcore, the Kurt Rosenwinkel thing.
yeah,
I didn't know if that was an influence on you at all, that particular album. Um,
for sure.
could you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's uh Rosenwinkel looms large in every guitar player's thing, I think. But that record in particular is my favorite by him, and really is one of my favorite records ever.
Mm,
And so, yeah, I think that's probably some of the impetus for a lot of the uh, electric drum sounds, and then to take it back to Kurt. I when I My first rehearsal trying to play this music, I was talking with Kurt like, hey man, is there any way you can combine some of these electric sounds with your phrasing? He studied Elvin, he studied all the greats, and he can play all this stuff, but
hmm.
then also have this electronic sound that's happening while he's phrasing like that. And so I didn't know anything about the logistics of this. So he went out and bought some drum triggers, which, that's old technology by now, but new to me. But basically, he learned how to do it all, like, and was such an important part of the album because he took it upon himself to like figure out how to do some of this stuff in real time. And when we're tracking, we were hearing the combination of the two. It's not like it was a production after the fact to add some of these electronic sounds. Like he was doing it all in real time as we're playing, so we reacted to it in that kind of way. And yeah, Curtis noticed that and really hooked it up.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's cool that I wasn't too far out with the hardcore. And
Oh yeah, yeah, you nailed it. That's yeah, favorite Kurt album for
yeah,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good one. It the first time I heard it, it shook me up in a good way, but I had to come back to it. And by the third time, I was all the way in. And just to hear somebody kind of come in that language, I'll say, and extend that is really exciting, man. Um, I like the titles of the tunes too. And I think about Running the Storm with all we've been through, over the last year and a half. What
Certainly.
does that mean to you, and why did that kind of stand out as a theme for this latest iteration of your music?
Well, it's kind of based on a childhood story that my family all tells, and we were on a boat, and a huge thunderstorm came up on us, and we all almost died. I think that part is not exaggerated. There's other parts, that have
Wow.
maybe become exaggerated, become legend over the years, but yeah, we were really in it, and there's sort of a thing on the boat, where which you don't want to do is get caught sideways in waves. You want to be, running into the storm. You have to, so you have to be kind of deliberate about it. And of course, it's a perfect relatable metaphor for the rest of life, and that you can't get caught blindsided and stale. You have to, truck through, and so that was the title track, and I thought it works well as a sort of overarching theme for the whole album too.
Mhm. Absolutely, it does. It does. Um, when we think about sound, apart from um, notes and melody, but just pure sound, I think about Jimi Hendrix sometimes, the way that he was able to, have this, fourth branch of music almost. Think about Jaco Pastorius too, how he was able to, get tone out of his instrument, but also, do these interesting kind of rhythmic patterns that didn't even sound like bass. Um, there's a tune on here, Storm's Eye, that I think falls within that neighborhood, man. And I'm just wondering, is that an organ? Is that, how did you kind of come up with that sound concoction, man? It's really interesting.
Sure. Well, so the freeze pedal, if there's guitar players out there, the EHX freeze pedal, it's it has an organ-like quality to the sound that it sustains for you. It's basically a sustain pedal, and I use it like a sustain pedal on the piano. In that I have it on my right foot. It
Mhm.
has to be on my right foot, otherwise who knows what had happened. And it's very much the same impulse where you play a chord as you step into your right foot to hold it, and then maybe whatever. But so that's that sound, and you're going to be hearing a lot more of that as I think I was just starting with that pedal as this album happened. So it's on there, but I think now it's really become part of my instrument. So it's gonna there's gonna be a lot more of that. In addition to that, Drew, who did production for the album, um, he added he added some really nice stuff there. I mean, it was a solo guitar piece that I played through, but he kind of produced it like with all the not all but many of the tricks of modern production. So it's kind of like this, it's solo guitar, but then it's also dressed up with he adds like a sub note somewhere. He's got all this sort of things happening, moving while I'm playing solo guitar. So you'd have to ask him exactly what some of those sounds are, but
Okay.
they're great.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool, man. That's cool. Um, and it's interesting too. I want to ask you about the move to Los Angeles. That's something that my partner Nate Chinen and I talked about recently on our podcast, Jazz United. A question came up, talk about the LA jazz scene. And is it on par with New York now? There's a lot of amazing players in Los Angeles, a lot of amazing players in New York, and many in New York over the past, I'm going to say, 5 to 7 years have made the migration out to Los Angeles. What is it about LA for you that you feel is hospitable to your work, your sound, your life flow? Tell us about LA.
Yeah, well, I've been here almost a year now, and at first it was just a Corona move. I didn't want to re-sign an expensive lease in Chinatown in New York, and my girlfriend is from here, and it was kind of just like let's try it out for a while. And as I did that, I started hearing, oh, this Marquise Hill is going to move here. Ben Williams is here now. My, close friend Braxton was already here. John Davis is here. Like I kept hearing all these names were in LA now. It's like we all kind of like somehow, without talking about it, ended
Mhm.
up here. And I think to answer the why, it's a lifestyle thing. It's just like New York is rough, I think, for the general day to day living. Um, and I once visited New York in high school, and I said, "Oh, this is the last place on earth I'd ever want to live." And then music happened, and it happened to be, the best place on earth for music. Um, but I think at least talent wise, it seems like LA is a close number two. And I'm interested and excited to see how it develops now that all these people are here and see what's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely something in the water out there. Has been for a long time. I think about venues in Los Angeles and the need for more of them. In New York, it's
Yeah.
almost like, every third restaurant has some kind of a music offering. But when I went to Los Angeles last, that was the part that I was kind of stumped by. And as this COVID thing has unraveled, or we were still in it, but as we progress to the next stage, I'll say it that way. Do you think more musicians will basically pick up the baton to make their own venues, their own kind of DIY spaces? What's your feeling on just kind of taking the bull by the horns and making more opportunities to play?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm optimistic about it. I think that somebody's. I guess the guy who does the Blue Whale, there's talks that he's gonna open up a new space, or he's looking for a new space. So that's good news. Um, and I mean, it's just like a matter of time. If all the talent is here, if there's all these great musicians, there's got to be an outlet. And, it's like water going, it's going to find a way, I think. So I don't know that I'm the most industrious guy to be doing all that, but I think I'm optimistic nonetheless that it's going to happen.
Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely. I hope so, man. So many killer players are making the move westward. And like you say, just kind of that entrepreneurial thing. It's going to happen. I'm hoping that it happens soon because that's a lot of talent concentrated. I think about this too. The way that you play, the following that you're amassing in the guitar community and the musical community. Um, if this were, say, circa 2000, 2001, you probably would be on a major label. But being an independent, what are some ways that you're thinking about, even in this COVID situation, making sure that people have an opportunity to hear what you do? What are some things that you're working on or thinking about to just spread the influence of Renfroe?
Uh, well, I'm not the most qualified person to answer that. But for me, uh, I I just it just I didn't do anything as a leader until 2 years ago.
Hmm.
So for most of my time as a musician, I would consider myself sideman first, and to me that's a compliment. That means somebody who can play all these different people's music. That means somebody who's in demand. That means somebody who can elevate any situation and be creative in any situation. So this pivot to me being a leader is new and a little unfamiliar to me, and I'm figuring it out. But ultimately, I have a lot of music that I want to get out. I have a lot of influences that I've been sitting on. I have a lot of ideas that are pent up over the last 15 years, 10 years, and my last 2 years or last year really reflects that. I put out an EP a year ago, and then maybe 3 or 4 months later, I put out a joint record with the bass player Luke Selleck, where we're playing country tunes and a rootsy kind of thing. And then now I have this, and I'm already thinking another 2 or 3 albums ahead, and have ideas for it all. Um, so I don't know. I have the music that I want to put out, and I'm going to put it out. And as far as the hustle, I don't. I I'm going to try to do my best so that I'm doing the music a service, but that's not where my head's at as much.
I think that's fair, man. I think that's fair because I kind of get overwhelmed sometimes with the formula that says this is the artist, he has to tour, he has to leave everything else behind and pursue his own. I think there's room for a lot of things at once. And I
Yeah.
think that we kind of need to renegotiate the relationship between releasing albums and feeling the pressure, to have an organized ensemble, an organized band. And with this COVID thing, I'm really watching because it's not as easy to get out there, and you don't know how far to book in advance. And
Yeah. Yeah. And all that, I mean, I am going to do that eventually, and my end goal is like, oh, if I could do 4 good gigs a year, like feature nice venues and listening audience, and that would be great. As far as like really hustling tours and being in charge of all that, that strikes me as taking me away from music and into email land and just all the stuff that I'd rather. I like music. That's why I'm doing this, you know? And that's the con of stepping out of the sideman world. In the sideman world, it's more about music, and that's what I love. That's why I'm doing this, you know?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely, man. I love it. I love it. Man, tell me a little bit too. I know you get asked this a lot, but for folks who haven't seen you play, who are listening, maybe they'll stumble upon a YouTube, but it's very unique how you mic the guitar as well as amp it. I'm fascinated by that and the sound that's the result of, both uh, outputs, not just the amp signal. You have this nice blend again of the electric acoustic thing. It's that current that runs through your sound, man. I love it. But specifically about the guitar, man, how did you arrive at your special miking and amp technique?
well, yeah, I mean, I've tried different techniques to achieve that over the years, including a piezo pickup blended in. But I guess the first idea I think came from Bobby Broom,
Mm,
who's my favorite guitar player.
that's a good one
Just
to have.
yeah, the greatest in my
Yeah.
mind. And he has this record, "The Way I Play," which is a
Hmm.
live record. And I think the story is it was a student's Zoom recorder
Yep.
at his regular gig.
That's right. That's right.
And he ended up finding some of the better nights or better takes and putting it out.
Hmm.
And that record totally messed me up, along with his other ones from that time period in particular. But that record, because it was a Zoom recorder and it was placed somewhere near the band, you could hear his very audible pick attack while he's playing all this. And and he has such a great touch and attack that was comes through so clear, even though it's a like a bad recording, you know.
Hmm.
And I also started to notice that as I would record gigs on my iPhone, if I put an iPhone on the music stand near me, you're hearing the guitar attack.
Hmm.
And as I went, if we did a recording or something in a studio, I'd say, oh, I'm missing something. That's only half the sound.
Hmm.
When you're practicing at home, or even in any situation where you're not playing with loud drums, on a hollow body guitar like that, you're still hearing the sound of the guitar. And then only on a studio recording or a loud gig situation is that lost.
Hmm.
So my goal is to just keep that there always. It should always sound like I'm there in the room playing. That's the sound of the instrument. That's the whole picture for me.
Absolutely, man. It's funny you bring up that record. I used to live maybe 2 blocks away from where that was recorded. I used to
Oh
go
wow.
watch it every Wednesday night when I
Oh
lived in
cool.
Evanston. Yeah,
You're
man.
lucky, man. I
Yeah,
love
I
that.
saw some good nights, man. I saw some good nights, and I haven't seen the guy in years, but Lee Rothenberg may have been the one that recorded those the mini discs of that gig.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know him, but tell him thank you if you ever see
Absolutely.
him.
Absolutely. Yeah, Broom is the truth. Broom is the truth. But you are too, man, and that's really cool to hear that he is your number one guitar player if you had to name one. I do want to ask you about some others in your development. Um, who were some cats maybe from earlier than Broom's generation, like 60s and 70s that had kind of impact for not just, jazz, but anybody, folks that you dig.
Um, well, that's a long and open-ended list, but I mean, I have to, I mentioned Bobby Broom being my favorite guitar player. I mean, favorite musician is Coltrane, and even so far as saying all four of them, and
Yeah.
that's so that is bigger in my development uh, than guitar players of the day. Love Grant Green, love Wes.
Mhm.
Um, But the music that really hit me was Coltrane, Lee Morgan, McCoy,
Hmm.
um, Wayne Shorter,
Hmm.
Sonny Rollins. We didn't talk about him yet. I love Sonny Rollins. Gary Bartz, Jackie McLean. I was lucky to go to the Hart School in Hartford, and that's a huge part that we didn't talk about too, which
Yeah.
is they had such a strong musical culture happening in Hartford, because Jackie McLean started this program,
Yep.
and even though he had passed by the time I got there, it was still very much in place. The vibe and sort of emphasis on hard bop and black music and taking this seriously. And so I'm infinitely thankful that that's where I ended up for undergrad, because that was a really formative time for me. And when you're that young and you get to, I was just you're at jazz school, and being from Florida, I didn't really know anybody. It was just me and Jamie Aebersold in Florida, and then
Yeah.
and then I got to Hartford, and so there's this whole culture and hierarchy, and
Hmm.
you know, and so that really shaped um, my sound a lot, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great environment, man, and a great element to bring forward. I do want to ask you about Braxton Cook as your, frontline partner, basically. The way you two phrase is almost like breathing. It's like one mind, and that takes a lot of trust and relationship. When you guys first started working together, was there instant magic, or how did it develop over time that you guys were able to be um, so in sync as a front line?
Yeah, so I met him in at Juilliard, and I think if you've ever met him, he's very enthusiastic. He loves music, so I think I played a solo in big band or something, and he was just psyched about it, and like came up to me after, and was like really cool and supportive and nice, and so that was the start of it. And then so he was just starting to put out, or just starting to think about his own music at that point. And so we would rehearse, and for a long time our musical relationship was just his music, me playing his music. So this pivot to it being the opposite is new, but all the things that we learned from playing his music, I think, translate over. And there's certainly a lot of common influences. Coltrane for sure, and also he's a singer, so everything he when he's playing a melody, it's like singing. And I remember when I first had the demos of some of these songs. Um, I had they were all started in Ableton, and I just had these rough demos, all these, and I didn't know if they were any good. And when I had him over and we played through the melodies together, that's when I first knew that they were good, because he has this way of really figuring out how to phrase a melody and make it sing and make it be natural. And so, yeah, just time spent playing together for sure.
That's real. That's real. Man, I want to ask you one more thing as the final question here. If you had to change anything, one or two things about um, the current state of musicians and the music business, what would make it easier for you to do your job?
Wow. I don't know. I mean, I'm new to the band leading, as I've previously mentioned, and but it seems to me if the streaming situation was turned up on its head, and everybody was actually getting paid, um, that would certainly go a long way to improving the whole state of music, you know. If we were still selling CDs and, you know, which by the way, you can buy it on Bandcamp still, but it's also for streaming, you know, because if you don't do that, you're not in the game, you know. But yeah, if that paid, I think that would certainly change a lot. Um, and then also, you know, arts education, I think it like from a young age, America's probably dropped the ball on for a long time. And, you know, if there was more appreciation, it's so just what we do is so foreign to regular people, I think, sometimes. And it's just too far of a bridge to connect. So if that were shorter, you know, there could be more general interest in the music and
Yeah, I like that, man. Yeah. I'm gonna get you to hang on with me, man. But it's been a pleasure chatting with you, man. Your album is fantastic, man. I'm wishing you the best.
well, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here and talk with you.